Calling this meeting to order. We'll be conducting this evening's meeting in a virtual setting. Council members and staff are participating from remote locations, and the Deputy City Clerk, Mona Schilling, is in chamber to accommodate public communication. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live this evening on Spectrum Channel 3 and 22, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and or Segundo TV at youtube.com. Please remember to mute your mics when not speaking. And council members, if making a motion or second, please do so using your last name in order for the clerk to hear and report correctly. And we're going to start with the invocation being led by the city clerk. And then following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel. So I'll turn it over to the clerk.
All right. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Guide us to be leaders. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and to treat all persons with the reverence they deserve. Renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community. Amen.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Please rise, face the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Absolutely. Councilmember Giroux.
Here.
Councilmember Nickel.
Here.
Councilmember Perstuck. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Here.
And Mayor Boyles.
Here.
Alrighty.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone in chamber wishing to speak?
Yes, we have 4 speakers this evening. Did you
Okay,
hear that?
great.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and if you could have them state their name when they step up to the podium, please.
John Pickhaver, and this evening a few representatives from El Segundo for Black Lives wanted to respond to remarks made by Councilman Giroux, where he asked a number of questions and gave an impassioned plea for answers. Our group knows what it feels like to ask questions and receive no answers, to have calls for action met with inaction. So tonight we are here to respond to your concerns, Councilman Giroux, because ignoring you would not only be unprofessional and disrespectful, but it'd be antithetical to the values of our rapidly growing organization. You asked, where is the outrage? Where are the equality and justice groups today? Where were they last Friday when 2 deputies were ambushed and shot? You called upon these groups to stand up and condemn this act of cowardice, arguing that anything else would be acceptance. Councilman Giroux, El Segundo for Black Lives is a peaceful group with an ongoing cooperative relationship with our local police department. We do not condone violence in any form against any individual for any reason, which is why we absolutely condemn the ambush of sheriff deputies last month. If you thought otherwise, sir, then you have not been paying attention or listening to us at all these last 4 months. El Segundo for Black Lives is dedicated to combating systemic racism within every institution and every aspect of our community. We speak out against racism in every form, and we demand justice and equality for all. So then, why did we not mobilize a response to the attempted murder of the sheriff's deputies? It reminds me of another question we always receive. Why don't we care about Black on Black crime? Or another, what is El Segundo for Black Lives doing about gun violence in Chicago? Of course, as individuals and citizens, we care about all forms of wrongdoing. Our organization, however, is designed to address and challenge institutional racism. There are a number of groups throughout this country dedicated to addressing gun violence. We don't expect those groups to respond to those crimes committed with an individual's hands, with a knife, or another deadly weapon that is not a firearm. That's because these groups devote all of their resources, money, time, and energy into their specific focus in order to carry out their mission. In the same way, we hope you can understand that El Segundo for Black Lives is an anti-racism group. Again, this does not mean that we as individuals do not care about other important social issues or horrific events. It simply means that our organization is committed to combating racism. That our group is not designed to confront every ill that society faces is not hypocritical any more than a cancer charity raising money to cure cancer and not ALS. You also asked us if we would denounce the crime against the officers. We do, absolutely. And we understand one of the fundamental tenets of our organization and the wider Black Lives Movement overall is to address crimes by the police against Black and brown people. Shouldn't we therefore be combating crimes by citizens against police? Isn't this much closer to the issue than cancer and ALS? Those are fair questions, and we have clear answers. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my fellow group member to answer those questions. Thank you.
My name is Gabriella. When a lone individual commits a heinous crime such as that which was committed against the deputies, we fully accept that the shooting of the deputies would immediately be considered a crime, that the perpetrator would be sought, that when located, the perpetrator would be arrested, that the perpetrator would be charged in a manner that reflects the seriousness of his action, that the perpetrator would be convicted, and that the perpetrator would be prosecuted and sentenced to a full extent of the law. And what happened? It was immediately considered a crime. The perpetrator was found, arrested, and charged, and if convicted, faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. That's justice, and we stand by that process. Now, when the state commits a violent act against a Black or a brown person, the same process is almost never the case. Recall the story of a Black man who was brutally beaten by several law enforcement officers who hit him with batons, kicked him and punched him, landing over 30 blows. He suffered a fractured facial bone, a broken right ankle, multiple bruises and lacerations. Everything was caught on tape. Yet despite the severity of the attack and the use of batons and tasers, the officers were not charged with an attempted murder or assault with a deadly weapon. Instead, they were charged with a simple assault and excessive force. The jury, which did not contain a single Black person, did not convict the officers for a single crime. Councilmember Giroux, you also asked how we have gotten to a place where people are so angry and so divided. We do not agree with anyone blocking the entrance to a hospital. Absolutely not. We do not understand that this story was later proven false. We do understand that this story was later proven false. Regardless, the question of how we have gotten to a place of such anger and division is fair and should be met with an answer. The story of the Black man that John just told, as I hope you know, is the story of Rodney King. And the instance of police brutality happened nearly 30 years before Derek Chauvin, a law enforcement officer, hands in his pockets, grinning at the camera, spent nearly 10 minutes kneeling on the neck of George Floyd. The nation watched as Mr. Floyd begged for his life, called for his mother, and breathed his last breath. It took nearly 4 days of national protests and unrest for Chauvin before Chauvin was arrested for murder. Even then, it was widely acknowledged as the fastest a law enforcement officer has ever been charged. He was initially charged with third-degree murder, the type of murder reserved for the least culpable situations. The protests continued. Then the charges against Chauvin were eventually elevated to second-degree murder. Don't you see the amount of nationwide unrest it took to get George Floyd's murderer charged for a crime we all saw on our cell phones and TV screens? This is the systematic injustice that we fight against. Systematic injustice that dates back to the first days when Africans were brought to the American shores in chains to be enslaved, when in 1955, Emmett Till was barbarically murdered for whistling at a white woman and his killers went free. from Ahmad Diallo, who in 1999 was fatally shot 19 times while standing outside his apartment door unarmed, and whose law enforcement killers went free. To Breonna Taylor, a Black woman who was shot dead in her home by police, none of whom have been charged for her murder. You asked how we could care about things that happened across the country and not about something so close to home. Well, although the examples above didn't happen anywhere near El Segundo, many more have. Back in April, 20 minutes from here, Daniel Hernandez was killed after an LAPD officer shot him 6 times from 30 feet away. 15 minutes from here, LA Sheriff shot Dion Kinsey 15 times after stopping him for a traffic violation. And 10 minutes from here, a sheriff deputy shot 18-year-old Andre Guardado 5 times in the back. None of their killers have been charged with anything. None.
Good evening, Amanda Touchton. Councilmember Giroux, in addition to the questions that my fellows just answered, you asked another question. You asked whether I would want to become a law enforcement officer or whether I would want my child to become one. Well, I'm well beyond the age that I could apply to be on the force, but I do have 2 children, a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old. And in answer to your question, no, at this point, I wouldn't want them to join law enforcement because the system of policing in the United States has systemic wrongs that run so deep that they must be addressed and corrected. And how does our current institution prevent law enforcement from being successful? One way that we do this is by requiring our police to respond to mental health crises without the benefit of trained mental health professionals. To my understanding, there is only one single mental health professional employed by the El Segundo Police Department, leaving our officers responsible for responding to mental health crises. People with mental illness are 16 times more likely to be killed in a police encounter than people without mental health issues. Micah Lee was 19 years old when his mother called the police for help because her son was in the middle of a mental health crisis. Now he's dead. 50-year-old Michelle Crusoe was shot through the heart after officers responded to a mental health call. The officer said he was frightened by the look on her face. 41-year-old African-American Daniel Prude was killed after having a mental health crisis. Officers placed him in a spit hood and held his head against the concrete until he suffocated to death. Having law enforcement respond to mental health crises is dangerous for our citizens, but it also places our law enforcement officers in a terrible position. They're not properly trained to respond to these situations, and we shouldn't expect them to be. Police officers should police crime. They should not do the work that someone with a licensed mental health degree is responsible for doing. Another issue that I would really ask that we look at when we look at systemic issues with policing is how we police our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. In January of 2020, reports showed that more than 1 out of the 3 times that force was used by LAPD, that force was used against a person experiencing homelessness. We spend $23 million a year on policing in El Segundo. It would seem to me that some of that money would be better spent on 24-hour teams of mental health professionals and social workers, that perhaps instead of policing the homeless and the mentally ill and wrapping them up in the expensive criminal justice system, we could focus on building housing for our unhoused neighbors, increasing access to mental health services, and focusing on crime prevention through reducing poverty.
right place. Yeah, there we are. Hey there, I'm Elias Garcia. So I'm going to be responding to one of the last of your questions, Mr. Giroux, when you asked if I would want to be a member of law enforcement. And while I do respect the work that police officers do, as does every one of the leaders of El Segundo for Black Lives, I could not consider joining the force myself. I am deeply troubled by the fact that in our fever to respect law enforcement, we have lost sight of our obligation to hold them accountable. This type of check and balance is not anti-police or anti-American. Our nation was founded by revolutionaries who did not want government power imposed on the individual citizen without restraint. But the examples that have been shared with you today of police killing Black and brown people without consequence are not the exception. They are the rule. What does any of this have to do with El Segundo? Well, one of the things we have asked you to do is have a citizen review board. Our military is ultimately overseen by a civilian, the president, so our police should be beholden to the citizens they protect and serve. We also need to address the issue of racial profiling in El Segundo and hold law enforcement accountable. We have collected example after example of individuals in our city being subject to racial profiling. The policy in El Segundo, however, is to only keep record of an encounter if a ticket is written or an arrest is made, as most of these harassing stops are resolved with no ticket or arrest. When the individual explains his lawful presence in town, no record of this profiling is maintained. This means that we are left to data collected from anecdotal experience and have no way to hold ESPD accountable. Why is there so much resistance to keeping track? The ESPD already wears body cameras. We already have the data. We would just need to look at it. The institution of law enforcement is one of great power and insufficient oversight. And as a student of philosophy, I find that antithetical to our American traditions and values. Thank you.
Okay, there's no more public communications here in the chamber.
Thank you, Ms. Schilling. And Madam Clerk, are there written communications as well?
Yes, we have written communication. Dear Council, I am writing in support of allowing beekeeping in El Segundo again. I am sure you are aware of the importance of bees to the environment, so I won't spend words on that. My grandparents used to keep bees here in town, and I'd love to do so with my own children. I'd vote for ducks too, to help with weed control. Our garden already has several varieties of bees visiting, and we'd love to cultivate a domesticated hive. Thank you, Sarah Ainsworth. Dear council members, I am allergic to bees and support this. I've had anaphylactic reactions to bees, itchy difficulty breathing, swelling up, and I still approve. Love bees. They are nature's gift to earth. Only wish we can do better to them. A little known secret. Honeybees don't sting unless provoked. They will protect their queen, nest, or if agitated, and then will die after they sting. I've been stung multiple times in my life and decided to do research. Bees may be attracted to a scent or a color on you, but if you let them be, they will leave you alone. Do not swat them. Do not provoke them. Let them be. I am saying this from years of experience. Also, our first responders carry EpiPens, the medication epinephrine, which slows the reaction time. Benadryl is another medication you can use for mild reaction. Respectfully yours, Alan, and I can never pronounce his last name, Samirjan. And your last one, I fully support the beekeeping ordinance. It's important to have guidelines and rules around queen bee management because if the city doesn't, people may illegally keep bees and run the risk of accidentally hosting Africanized bees. An ordinance would also have the rules on property lines and public walkways. I also support all the sustainability work the Environmental Committee is working towards. With finite resources and increasing costs, it's important to work towards a sustainable city. Best regards, Corey Zupo. And that is it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Mitnick, any comments?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the first four speakers spoke on police issues. And as a reminder, on the agenda tonight, a little later, City Council will be voting on the selection of the 9 members to serve on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. and this will be one of their topics once they get started, probably later this month. And the public safety issues, policing in particular, will be part of their purview. So the individuals who spoke on this can participate or can monitor those meetings and share their views with that committee. And that committee will come back with recommendations to the full city council down the road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitnick. Bless you, Carol. All right, we are on to special presentation.
Mr. Mayor, may I add one
course.
comment? I know there was a degree on homelessness, and I wanted to make sure that the public speakers are aware that as part of the countywide effort, we contribute via Measure H to about a $360 million wide fund for rehousing. It's a county initiative because many of these people experiencing homelessness are transiting between the 88 cities in the county. So the county has lead on that. And when it comes to the jurisprudence, Redondo Beach has a pilot program for homeless court that we closely monitor should our demand require a similar intervention. So those are top of mind of things we're doing, but I wanted to bear in mind for the public that we're part of the county and regional effort to that. And we certainly spend quite a bit of time on it in our biweekly meetings.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Appreciate that clarification. All right, I've got a proclamation to read. This is for Active Aging Week, and I believe we're going to have Ms. Julie Todd of the library, who's been really involved in many things in the library, arts and culture early on, and I think she's going to accept this. I'll read it. Whereas El Segundo has a long history of promoting the benefits of a healthy lifestyle and high quality of life, so we join the national efforts to highlight people that participate in life as fully as possible at any age. And whereas adults over 65 represent over 11% of El Segundo's population and are a very important component of the fabric of our community. And whereas El Segundo encourages the benefits of a healthy lifestyle to all our citizens, and especially older adults, by providing opportunities to experience diverse activities and social encounters throughout the city and many partnering organizations. And whereas Active Aging urges engagement in all aspects of wellness, including physical, professional, social, spiritual, and emotional environmental wellness. And whereas El Segundo is proud of our many citizens that stay physically active, continue to volunteer, continue to pursue educational and other personal growth opportunities, and stay engaged in our community. Now, therefore, the mayor and members of the city council of the city of El Segundo, California, hereby proclaim October 5th through the 11th of 2020 as Active Aging Week in El Segundo, and invite the entire community to remain active at all ages, as well as nurture lifelong wellness in your family, friends, and neighbors. And I think this is particularly relevant considering this council decided that one of our strategic priorities was to focus on being an age-friendly city and helping seniors age in place. This fits really nicely with that. And did Julie Todd join us? Is she here? There she is. Hi, Ms. Todd.
Yes.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you.
Good. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So thank you. I wanted to thank all of you for the proclamation and acknowledging Active Aging Week. Active Aging Week is October 5th through 11th this year. And Active Aging Week was initiated in 2003 by the International Council of Active Aging. And it's a week-long campaign that calls attention to and wholeheartedly celebrates the positivity of aging today. It showcases the capabilities of older adults as fully participating members of society and spotlights the role models that lead the way. This is the objective of the annual health promotion event is to give as many older adults as possible the means to experience wellness, activities, and exercise in a safe, supportive environment. And it also promotes the benefits of a healthier, more active lifestyle across lifespan. This is the second year that we've celebrated active aging, and the library has partnered with Recreation and Park staff and several other community partners, including El Segundo resident wellness nurse Carol Hahn, registered nutritionist Mary Rotolo, Esmoa, and Davis and DeRosa Physical Therapy. Active Aging packets have been distributed to all of Park Vista residents, and they're also available through the Library to Go program. So we're passing those out while supplies last this week. We also have a week-long events that we're hoping to encourage people to participate in. Monday, we had a virtual walk that was sponsored by Aegis Therapies. And this year, due to the pandemic, it was virtual. Tuesday, we were trying to encourage people to be social. So we were offering them to invite a friend to a virtual coffee or tea. Wednesday, Carol Hahn will be teaching a yoga meditation class on Zoom, and that will be at 1 p.m. And Thursday, registered nutritionist Mary Rotola will be presenting on healthy eating and healthy mind, and that will be also at 1 p.m. on Zoom. And Friday, we're inviting our residents to join ASMOA in their virtual Just Draw program, and that is from 10 to 11, also on Zoom. Saturday at 10 a.m. on Zoom also, Davis and DeRosa will be presenting on balance and fall prevention. So we're happy to have Davis and DeRosa this year joining us. And then on Sunday, there's a lot of pre-recorded classes and videos for people to enjoy on the Active Aging website. And for further information or for the Zoom links, they're welcome to reach out to the reference desk or call the reference desk at 310-524-2728. And thank you for the opportunity to share with the residents.
Thank you, Ms. Todd. Have a great night. Appreciate you being on. Great program. All right, next up we have Captain Bermudez. Jaime's here to talk about National Night Out, which just wrapped up. We'll turn it over to you, Captain. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jaime Bermudez. I'm a captain with the police department. And I just want to briefly talk about our National Night Out event that happened today. So, you know, as was brought up in a previous council meeting, unfortunately, we had to change it due to COVID restrictions, the date. We couldn't have our traditional National Night Out in August, so we had to make it virtual and move it to today, August 6th. National Night Out is a national event that promotes police and community engagement, and it's something we have been celebrating for several years, so we're very proud of that program. This year, we made it available through Facebook, Instagram, and also through our city website. Our team did a fantastic job of coordinating the event. It was something different, but they rose to the occasion and they did a fantastic job. So they highlighted our school resource unit, our K-9 unit, our SWAT team, and also our community lead officers. So I just wanted to talk briefly about the views. So our K-9 training video, there's a series of videos on the website. Our K-9 training video has been #1. We'll probably get more views as the evening goes along, but you know, the dogs never disappoint. And #2 was the SWAT team presentation. That was also very popular with our residents and the people that logged in. And also the Q&A with Chief Whalen, that also did very well. So just wanted to brief you on that. I want to thank everyone who logged in and hope to see you next year in person. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have procedural motions. Item A, consideration of a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only. Stating your last name, if you have a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only, please state your name.
Pimentel, so moved.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Giroux, second.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Vote.
Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, you passed 5-0.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, consent calendar. Items 1 through 5. Are there any polls this evening?
I pulled 3B.
3B. Okay, thank you. Noted. Any other polls? All right, do I have a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3A, and then 3C through M?
Pimentel, so moved.
Nichols, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will we please have a vote?
You guys are so fast. Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, all pass with the exception of 3B, which was pulled.
Okay, and then I'll turn it over to you, Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes, so 3B is adopt resolution to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the agreement number 5861 with Register Pacific Inc. for the city's economic development and hospitality and tourism marketing services in the form of approved by the city attorney. 1, to extend the terms of the agreement to June 30, 2021, and 2, to authorize payment for services up to $262,500 from the general fund. City manager, $152,500 and Chevron grant fund of $110,000 held in the fiduciary fund. So the reason why I wanted to pull this is just, given with everything that's gone on in our city with COVID, and especially the hit our tourism sector has taken, I just wanted to reiterate how important it is that we really focus on that area, ensure that we're doing as much as we can, because when our businesses are successful, we're successful. And especially with our hotel and tourism sector, as their number of stays goes down, our TOT revenue goes down. So I'm all for passing the budget. I just want to make sure that our focus is going to be laser focused on that sector to ensure that they can come back as fast as possible. And I know, Barbara, you probably can say a few words to that.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Perstuck. So we've had quite a year with respect to hospitality and tourism and everything else. That is a big hit to our revenue for the city. Obviously, was previously our number one source of revenue, the TOT, and our hotels are struggling, and our restaurants and our shops and everyone impacted by this is struggling. So we've had to pivot over the last year. This represents the equivalent expenditure to what we did last year. We have applied for a Chevron grant again that has become available. But we did have to put the program on hold, in March of last year for a couple months until we could figure out, okay, what we were doing before is no longer the right answer. So we had to redesign our program, focus on recovery, and focus on opening safely, and really keeping a close eye on every single announcement from the LA County Health Officer. We developed a website. We built it in-house, a page on our website for businesses specifically. It's on elsegundobusiness.com on reopening protocols and what to do. So we are focused on that. We have pivoted so that we are helping the businesses in a way that addresses our current environment. And so this represents our continued efforts going forward. The budget is, we do as much as we can, given, if things aren't open at all, it doesn't make sense to be driving traffic to hotels or restaurants. But, as things open up, we've been really pushing hard. We have, our Start Here logo that we developed, before this, and we have modified that logo and I'll share it with council. But it's now, it's Start Here, but it's reimagine, reopen, rediscover. So the idea is, we still want people to come visit El Segundo. We still want people to dine in our restaurants, stay in our hotels. We want them to do that safely. We're really pushing, safe in the South Bay, and other measures. The county has a measure to make sure that businesses open safely. So we are, to answer your question, we're in the fight here, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help our businesses, but we also have to be, of course, totally respectful of what the situation is and what the health officer order is. So we are, and Research is a great firm. They've been extremely flexible with us. They've been very creative in finding different solutions. We've done a couple videos we have coming out, real stories of resilience, where council members are interviewing business leaders and talking about how are you handling this situation, and what advice do you have for other businesses who might be in a bit of a quandary right now about what next step to take. We're doing a Hospitality Heroes segment that's going to be about people who are sort of on the front line of hospitality, and really making every effort to serve their customers and do a really great job in this new environment. So I appreciate that support, Councilmember Perstick, and we are definitely doing everything we can to help the businesses, survive and do well during this time.
And just, I just want to make sure that if you don't have if the funds aren't sufficient, that you let us know, because I know, speaking from my perspective, this is very critical, ensuring that we come back as fast as we can, and that we are really helping our business partners as much as we can to ensure that our own success, because when they're successful, we're successful. So I'll move, if at least anyone have anything else to say, otherwise I'll move forward to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve 3B. Councilmember Perstick, do we have a second?
Pimentel, second.
Okay, anyone opposed? No. Clerk, does that satisfy your requirement?
I just have to take a
5-0.
Voice vote.
No one's opposed.
Okay, well.
You want to do a voice? We'll do a voice vote, whatever you prefer.
It's the
That's
vote.
okay. That's okay. Proceed, please.
Councilmember Giroux.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Aye.
Councilmember Perstick.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yes.
And Mayor Boyle.
Yes, please.
Okay, 5-0. All right.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 4, new alcohol service for a restaurant at 100 West Imperial Avenue. This project is categorically exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, pursuant to 14 California Code of Regulations 15301 as a Class 1 categorical exemption. Existing facilities. Mr. Mitnick?
This
who is
part of consent. So
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it is. We already approved it.
okay.
Thank you. All right, moving on. And just, Scott, I know we were talking about this earlier today, the staff report. That is the new strip center that's being redone just adjacent to the car wash, is it not? Mayor Pro Tem's nodding his head yes. Or no?
No, west. If you're one, you got to go one block west of the car wash, west side of the road.
One block. Oh,
It's
got
in
it.
the 7-Eleven complex.
7-Eleven. Thank you. 7-Eleven. Got it. Okay, great. Thanks.
There's a
Should
really
know
nice
exactly
courtyard in the back corner of that complex.
Yeah, which you would never know unless you walk back through that. Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, item E, committees, commissions, and board presentations. This relates to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee member appointments. And I see Barbara Voss, Deputy City Manager. I assume you're going to report on this?
Yes, thank you,
Great.
Mayor Boyles. Good evening again, members of council. Just wanted to give a quick background and then turn it back over to Mayor Boyles to announce the members of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I'm happy to report that we have a selection of 9 members made. Just to recap the process briefly, we did receive 69 applications for this committee. It's obviously of very high importance to members of our community, and we requested the help of a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant to review the initial 69 applicants. He then narrowed the list down based on criteria that is on our website, level of experience, level of detail, and the responses of each applicant and their perspective on diversity. And then we narrowed it down at that point to 36 candidates who were interviewed by the DEI consultant. And then we got down to the final 20. Over a 2-day period, there were 2 special city council meetings on the 8th and 9th of September. And city council interviewed each of the 20 candidates. Each were asked the same questions. And then based on their responses, we have selected the committee. So that's great progress. I did want to note the next steps are that the diversity consultant and staff will be reaching out to the members of the committee and working on setting up the first meeting. And we plan to have that first meeting occur before the end of October, probably in the next 2 weeks, just depending on schedules and coordinating and getting everyone together. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mayor Boyles to announce the committee members.
Thank you, Mrs. Voss. Thanks to you and all the staff. Great work and the council did an amazing job last week with 2 days of interviews. All right, the appointees. First up, we have, and these aren't in any particular order, although the first few I'm going to mention, the first 3 actually have terms expiring in 2022, so they're staggered terms. So we're not replacing everyone in one slate. Lauren Abercrombie is going to serve through October 31st, 2022. Natasha Lee, who's an El Segundo High School student, will serve through October 31st, 2022. Stephen Wood will serve through October 31st, 2022, aka Coach Woody. Avery Smith will serve through October 31st of 2023. Kelsey Chittick will serve on the DEI through also 2023. Christina Vasquez will serve through 2023. Kenneth Chansey will serve through October 31st of 2024. Shad McFadden will serve through 2024 as well. And finally, last but not least, we have Cristobal Viena, who will serve through 2024 as well. So we've got a great, diverse group of representatives of that Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and we're super proud of all the work that the staff did and Mr. Jimmy Pete as well. He was instrumental. All right, moving on to public hearings. There are none, so we'll go to staff presentations. We've got COVID-19 pandemic update and planned reopening of certain sectors, and I see Chief Donovan there. Turn it over to you and Mr. Mitnick. Chief.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm going to share my screen and go through a slide deck. I want to let the group know that we have some important information to share with everybody. Excuse me, I got to get the slide deck positioned properly. My apologies. This is the October 6th update. Mayor and members of council, last week there was a lot of activity. The report that was in your agenda packet tonight talked about some of the work that the LA County Board of Supervisors held. We want to talk about that a bit. We want to share with the community some good news related to some reopenings in our community. Update the new information from Governor Newsom. I talk about some health metrics changes and then the local efforts as they relate to the coronavirus variances that have been taking place. My apologies, this is data from yesterday. We didn't receive the update from the County of Los Angeles until about 6 o'clock this evening. The numbers changed a little bit day over, but as of yesterday we had, as you could see, just shy of 7.4 million cases in the United States and a little under 210,000 deaths due to COVID-19. If you drill in locally in Los Angeles County, there were 472 new cases that were reported and 7 deaths. Here in El Segundo, we had no new cases. We're holding steady at 132. We've had 1 death, unfortunately, locally here in El Segundo, and our adjusted rate is at 2. That means we have 2 people in our community that are within a 14-day window of contracting COVID-19. Locally, what this means is that we're doing an outstanding job to help stop the spread of COVID-19, and I applaud our community members and residents for their efforts. Some good news to share with you. This is all in accordance with the LA County Public Health Officer's orders. And as a reminder, even with the LA County Board of Supervisors takes action and they make motions that are approved, we have to wait until the LA County Public Health Officer issues new orders, and then we respond really quickly to those. In the last week, we've seen outdoor playgrounds reopen, which is a great thing for our community. So now parents and kids can go to the local playgrounds, the 8 areas in our community that have actual play equipment. Youth sports will be returning. We have a great plan from the El Segundo Girls Softball League that has been reviewed and approved, and we're looking for an October 5 reopening. And we anticipate the AYSO also to be reopening October 26th. And I'd like to take a moment to thank our Parks and Recreation staff, their hard work and effort that have really kept up in making sure that we're responsive to the needs of our community. On last week, the LA County Health Officer offered the opening of nail salons to 25% indoor occupancy. And this is great news that we've been waiting for. As of 4:30 today, a new LA County Public Health Order was issued that will allow breweries that have specific state alcohol licenses to contract with caterers, food trucks, or restaurants and offer outside dining. And so, we've been talking with Sam Lee and internal staff in terms of how we can quickly learn more about this health order and be responsive to what we anticipate the 6 brewers in town that may be interested in this. And then for the community, this is all in accordance with LA County Public Health Orders. We have a lot of Halloween events that are being programmed, and we just wanted to let the community know early on that there'll be more marketing and advertising and information on this. Drive-through trunk or treat event will be held at Recreation Park. The police association will be partnering with our civic groups for the Halloween sleigh event, similar to the Christmas sleigh event. And we'll be doing an aquatic family swim movie event, all in compliance with health officer orders. So I think these are important positive things in our community. Some updates from the governor. You'll all remember that we have been monitoring and tracking 2 important health metrics. These are new cases per 100,000 and test positivity rates. These have to hit the thresholds of less than 7 per 100,000 and less than 8 positivity rates. We've, in the last several meetings, have been providing this information. We learned on the 28th of September that the governor issued a new updated health metric called an equity health metric. And if you'll bear with me, I know that this is a lot of text, a little overview of what the governor's new health equity metrics means is the governor identified that disadvantaged neighborhoods as defined as the lowest quartile of the California Health Place Index census tract account for 25% of the population and have 40% of COVID cases. So there's a website called healthyplacesindex.org. This lists the California Healthy Place Index, which predicts life expectancy and compares community conditions across the state. The governor then took action to say if a county within the state of California has a population of more than 106,000, they now must do 2 things: track test positivity rates in the lowest quartile neighborhoods, which is referred to as the new equity health metric, and they need to provide targeted investments. And Los Angeles County will be providing a report to the state, which is due by October 13th. And in that report, they will define disproportionated impacted populations. They will specify the percent of its COVID cases in these populations, and they will invest in epidemiology and laboratory capacities for prevention and control of COVID and other communicable diseases. And so this is new to us. This is a snapshot of the actual website. This shows Los Angeles County. In the green, the dark green, are those more healthy communities, and in the dark blue are those that are considered to be in the lower quartile of communities that are considered to be disproportionately unhealthy and unsafe. So with this new metrics, we have put in a new tracking on our slide here. And what the County of Los Angeles now needs to do is identify in the county to go from our current purple, which is a red widespread tier, to the red or substantial. We would need to have a health HBI census tract positivity rate of less than 8. The County of Los Angeles today reported that given the metrics that they use, it's a 4.4. So this is promising news and a good data. Unfortunately, what's difficult right now is the case rate, which is one of the more important factors, has steadily increased over the last 2 weeks. We have seen a 0.1% increase in the last 2 weeks of the Los Angeles County case rates. You'll see here that the testing positivity rate is really low at 2.8%, and we now factor in the test positivity for the lowest healthy quartiles at 4.4%. But because the case rate has gone up, we're still in a 2-week hold. The governor identified that there is a process for an accelerated progression to move from the purple tier to the red tier. And that's if we can show that the case rate begins to decline in the next 2 weeks, even if it's above the 7 per 100,000 on the case rate, we could move into the next tier if the equity index rate stays below 5%, which is a 2-tier drop. So we will be watching that very closely as well. This is the updated information from LA County. Our current stats were at 7.4 new case rate and in 2.8 positivity rate. So with all of this said, and the governor's new updated health metrics, we wanted to share with you and the community things that we've been doing with your direction and guidance to help get variances. Back in September, on September 10th, a letter was signed by the council and provided to the governor's office asking for a variance. We identified the county rate, we looked at the South Bay rates, and we looked at El Segundo, recognizing that in El Segundo and the South Bay, our test positivity and our new cases were remarkably low. We also, on September 16th, in conjunction with other South Bay cities, with the mayor signing the letter, we had a South Bay letter that went to the governor's office. And then on September 30th, we sent letters to all 88 cities asking for them to partner with us in our request for variances. I'm happy to report through Martha, our PIO, and that's probably the wrong term for her, I apologize, but our communications expert, she was able to provide some data that over 580 people opened the letter, and we're beginning to receive some feedback from that. And I think it's important that we continue this effort locally to advocate for variances. And most importantly, I think it's important for the community to realize that the staff is very responsive. We pay very close attention to the county health orders, to the Board of Supervisors. We listen closely to this council. And when changes are made, we move remarkably quick, and it's with intention. And by way of example, Friday afternoon at 3 p.m., we received a health order and the parks were open that night. And so we're going to continue to work hard to be responsive and be mindful of changes that may be coming. So with that ends my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Councilor Giroux.
So, Chief, on this new health metric, so sake of argument, in 2 weeks, our number gets below 7%. Let's just say it's 6%. But this new metric that our governor has put in, instead of being under 5, is 5.3. What happens?
If it's under 8 and our health and our case rates are
one goes down, the other one goes up. What happens?
Well, if the new metrics goes up above 8, then we would not be eligible to move into the next tier.
No, you said the health metric, the new one, right? The equity health one.
Yes, sir.
It had to be 5% or below. Am I correct?
To go into the substantial or next tier, it has to be below 8%. Below 8%. If it's below 5%, which is the next tier down, the orange tier,
okay,
even if we hold a higher new case rate, we'll be eligible to drop into the It's a wrinkle, and they call it an accelerated progression through the tiers.
So is your interpretation of this new health equity metric, is it a hindrance or a help?
We were uncertain because we didn't know what the number was going to be. And quite frankly, we were a little concerned that we thought the number was going to be quite high. The fact that they came back at a 4.4 test positivity rate is promising.
This is over the past 7 days?
This is the report the number that we got from the county that reported their metrics of identifying that lower fourth quartile of the neighborhoods that are the socioeconomic, lower economic areas, the low health areas.
Right, but what I'm saying is that number that we got, that 4.4, that's a 7-day period?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
If I could dovetail on that, I think that what we are seeing is that in some of the areas in LA County, we may have a bit of a distortion in that we have places that score very low in terms of their financial metrics in the health equity score, but do not have a similarly high case rate. So those are does not appear to be a one-to-one correlation in LA County. No surprise, it's a massive county. I think that metric is very clearly a political consideration. I think there's people who pushed for a metric, and then people on the other side who realized what a disaster that could conceivably be because it is indirectly related to pandemic response, not directly related to pandemic suppression. So you have a achievable score mixed with a new metric. So it gets to be a win-win on both. That's a have your cake and eat it scenario. What I am dismayed by, though, is it adds to the sense, I think, among our residents, and certainly to me, that aiming to succeed on a metric is a bit of a fool's errand because they just change. You know, we continue to do what we do, which is obviously effective, or what our residents are doing is obviously effective, and then we continue to work on their behalf. But the numbers will bear out whatever the magic wand of numbers of that week is going to be. These are, as the phrase goes, written in sand. So, Chief, thank you very much for leading on the effort. Clearly, we are, knock on wood, as we head to the troubled season of autumn and early winter. We're winning right now.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions? I got a question. I don't see. Yeah, go ahead, Lance. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to, I don't know if it's a conversation for right now on this, but I guess it is that I'm assuming we haven't gotten any response from our letter, okay, which I kind of expected at least a no, not a no response. But I guess that was too much to ask. Would we be better served at this point asking for specifics on a variance rather than a blanket variance? I mean, we're getting some things. I mean, it looks like they're giving an opportunity for the breweries and the wineries to open up based on certain things, but at least it's an opportunity. I would think that kind of the next thing is to try to get 25% of our, inside dining to our restaurants. Is that maybe a thing that we go and try to slice off next while the rest of this is going on? Do we think as a group, maybe that's a better way to go about it?
Let's ask, because I had asked before this meeting for staff to push the governor's office for a response, because I think it's just disrespectful, frankly. It's been several weeks now. And then along those lines, I had a quick question before we turn over staff to address your question, Lance, which is, Chief, we know that if we measured our stats independently outside of the new health equity metric, we would be in the lowest tier. That hasn't changed. We've been in the lowest tier for 3 weeks or whatever. Would the new health equity metric, let's just say, for example, that the governor's office said, yeah, that's rational. You guys you're doing a great job, and you can somehow insulate the rest of LA County from exacerbating the issue for COVID in El Segundo. But you have to meet this health equity metric in LA County. What is the health equity metric for the lowest tier? Forget about going from purple to red.
The lowest tier is less than 2.1 test positivity.
So it would be a more than 50% improvement where we're at in that health equity metric right now. So
that would put us.
That's going to be that would be problematic for it. So if the governor did say, "Yeah, I'm going to go along with what you guys said," that would still be an issue. for us if we wanted to be measured independently. So yeah, Lance, I think it's a perfect segue because I want to ask staff, or I'd like to ask staff, I don't know if Martha's on, but Barbara or Martha, if she's there, like did we hear back anything from the governor's office, and what are we gonna do about it? I don't see Mrs. Guzman Hurtado, so I'll turn it over to you, Scott. Mr. Mitnick?
Yeah, we have not had a response yet. And in the report, we did make reference to what some other South Bay cities are doing to make similar requests. So we're still in a wait and see mode right now. We have not heard back.
Well, the thing that was different about us, Scott, because I signed that letter that Torrance led and Redondo, and
yeah,
they were just asking for a variance, which is what we had asked for much earlier on in the pandemic. Our letter was very specific. We just want to be measured independently. We don't want to be lumped into LA County, just measure us independently. What are we going to do next, I guess is the question, because they haven't responded.
That's going to be up to the council, what you would like to do. As the fire chief pointed out, what the governor has done is set up the larger counties with these quadrants and so on. I will tell you, council, as you heard, we are clearly doing everything we can to get this community back to normal, opening up businesses. You heard all that, getting things back to normal with our residents. So we're pushing the envelope. At this point, council, you can direct us to keep up the fight, but this is it's very difficult as your staff. We share your frustration. We can't do anything more at this point.
Well, yeah, I think we could. I mean, Scott, I just want to ask a couple questions. One is, I think you're saying we can't do more right now unless we direct you otherwise to make some more noise about it and take a different approach, is I think what you're saying probably. And then I'd love to hear from the city attorney. Mark, I know you came back on. I'm assuming that's for a reason. Is there are there any legal options we have available to us at this point with the governor's office? And if so, what might those be?
Well, by and large, there's been numerous lawsuits filed against the state and a few against the county. By and large, those have been unsuccessful, as the courts are granting during the pandemic great deference to, at least in this part of the United States, the court system in this part of the country is granting great deference to these orders. And actually, one of the challenges went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they denied an emergency review of that, if you will. I can start to look into that issue deeper. I'm just alerting you that by and large, the legal challenges have not been successful. We're in the Ninth Circuit of this country, and I could look into that further. I don't have an answer specifically as to how we might challenge some of these on these issues. I think Councilmember Giroux's point, it might or might not, depending on what the council says, and what I can look at is if there are more specific type uses that the council wants to address, might that be more successful in trying to focus that as opposed to just a broad, if you will, exception. Because we by and large are seeing from these orders, as the governor and the county gets pressure on different specific issues that are coming from multiple cities within the county or even from the counties across the state, we're seeing some bending, if you will, on some of these issues. And so that might be more fertile ground to plow than just a general overall exception.
Hey, Mark, do you know, though, the legal challenges that have been made? What were they, the ones that failed?
They've been on numerous grounds. A lot of them have been by the faith-based institutions, and those have failed. I know that there has been a challenge filed by one of the owners of a large number of indoor malls in the state, and I have not seen a ruling on that yet. Although I note in the most recent order change from a couple of days ago that the malls with indoor access points at all were allowed to open up commensurate with what other retail is doing. So that's, again, the point. If there's focused areas, and there seems to be sort of a broad support for those focused areas, I do see the governor and the county making movement.
I just think that that's not necessarily, I'd love to say that. I don't know if it's our subject matter expertise. What I like about pushing them on the independent, measure us independently, is regardless of what they change, because they're changing things all the time. The framework has already changed. They said it was going to be this restrictive, and they said, no, these specific industries can now open. So regardless of how they change the rules, it still allows us to advance further than the rest of the county. And I frankly don't think we should just give up. I think we should, I'd love to hear from the rest of the council, but I think we should push harder on the governor's office to answer us at the very least. Councilman Nickel.
Squeaky wheel gets the oil. I would send that letter to the governor every single day for the next 7 days. Just same letter. Just keep sending it until we get a response. It's a stamp, right? Print it, sign it, stamp it, send it. That's what I would like to do. And at some point, we'll get an answer, or we won't. But I think we owe it to our citizen base to try. I mean, is that feasible, Chief, to send that letter every day, or Barbara?
Yes, it is. We could do that. I just wanted to update that we have stayed on top of it in trying to get a response, and that Communications and Legislative Affairs Manager, Martha, has contacted them again today. So what happened was the governor's office provided a response to Martha saying that the county health office, or I'm sorry, the state health office would be the one responding, and that they had forwarded the letter to that office and gave her a contact there. And we've been trying to get in touch with that person as well.
Councilman Perstuck.
So on the lines of Scott Nickel was talking about, maybe we be a little more transparent in our efforts, and as well as sending a letter to the governor every day, we post it on our Facebook page every day. Just say, we're still waiting. Here's the letter we sent out. And then, because I know that, we've been a leader in the incident management for COVID with a lot of cities. And so a lot of cities are watching what we're doing. And if we're once again a leader and put it out there, they're not going to want so much negative press, and we don't have to be, we could just be very factual about it, that we're sent this letter and we're waiting on a response, and we're being transparent. We're not doing anything that's negative. We're just showing that we're trying to help our citizens and help our businesses. So let's put it to Facebook or put it on social media.
Thank you, Councilmember Perstuck. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Giroux.
Well, I would just echo that. I think that our position is not reckless. Our position is grounded exactly as Councilmember Pierstick said. We prepared for this. We have citizen buy-in. We have a CERT program. We have a massive communication apparatus. We are seeing results from it, and I don't think we're asking for anything that is extreme or extraordinary or would hazard the residents. This is simply a matter of where we progress on the scale. Even if it's not to take us to the lowest tier, perhaps we advance by one tier, and asking for consideration in that regard. It's not extreme. I would say we want to be careful about how we articulate multiple letters, but letters that lay out that although we may be being verbose and sending a lot of them, the ask is not complicated, difficult, or hazardous, and it's measured with consideration of all the preparation we've put in. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying I agree with Councilmember Nickel and Councilmember Pierstick.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Giroux.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think we've been told all along to follow the science and follow the metrics. Well, when you do that, we come out in a very, very good light. But when it's not convenient for that to happen, the metrics change or the rules change. So I'm all in. I think we should do exactly what we've been talking about and keep being as noisy as possible, but in a constructive way.
You know what they say, no such thing as bad press, even if it's with the governor's office.
If I can add, do we go looking at providing editorial content or writing to an opinion page or anything of that nature? I don't know if that's bad form I would certainly yield to someone in that, someone in the staff who understands a little bit of the propriety of that. But is it reasonable for us to reach out to local media and say, hey, this is what we're asking for, and we don't think it's extreme?
Yeah, I believe we did talk about that, given that the Times is in our city. We talked about doing an article in the Times. We're having the Times do an article on our efforts.
Let me give that some thought. We certainly could do that. I just want to approach it in the right way. So, Scott, were you going to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we hear you loud and clear. We will follow up and as we discussed here, but I also want to talk to some of our advisors out there and make sure we do this strategically and effectively. So.
Okay. One final thought, Scott, can we just get an answer with the rationale as to why or why not? Because it is certainly not cool to just kick the can down to the county, because the governor's office is the one that's making all these mandates and restrictions, not the county.
So it was actually I'm sorry to clarify, it was the State Department of Public Health.
Okay.
Yes, but you know what?
That makes more sense.
I will work on getting an answer with the understanding it may not be the answer that we're hoping for. But then once we get that answer, we can talk about next steps.
Yeah, we have the call with the Deputy Director for Public Health on Friday. You don't want someone to feel as though they're being ambushed, but I think it's a reasonable question during the Q&A portion of that to ask if there is direct coordination on these sorts of things, given the size of the county is so much larger than the other counties with which they're dealing.
Yeah, great point. Who's going to be on that? Chris, will you be on that call Friday? Yeah. Okay. No, Scott's been on that, or staff. Great. Mr. Mitnick, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to remind you not to be bureaucratic or technical about this, but the way the governor's office or the state of California will look at it is, hey, the counties are the political subdivisions of the state. They're to carry this stuff out, and if there are variances, they go through the county. I know it's a technicality, but that's the framework in which we're working. So we hear you loud and clear. We'll get the word out. We will get a response from the governor's office. We will push and get that.
I think, Scott, also, I know that the South Bay, I think pretty much the entire peninsula, Torrance, Redondo, Manhattan Beach, likely Hermosa, feels the same way. So there are a number of cities within LA County that feel the same way that we do, that are in a similar boat.
Yeah.
So we do have allies.
We hear you loud and clear. And we'll keep the pressure on. We'll keep the community.
Okay. Any further thoughts or questions for Chief Donovan or Scott or Barbara? No, I think we're good. Okay. Thank you for that presentation, and thank you to El Segundo. Great work on getting COVID under control. All right. Next up, we have, let's see. All right. Do we need to, I guess we need consensus to receive and file. Is that right, Madam Clerk, on that last item?
Yeah.
Looking at my script.
Yeah, you're good. Normally, I just write it. You consent.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, I think we're good.
We have enough, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, item 7, adopt a resolution revising the Technology Committee bylaws. Mr. Mitnick, who will report on this item?
Our IT Director, Charles Mallory.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. The proposed resolution before you, we're recommending that we amend the bylaws to reduce the number of committee members from 11 down to 7 members. Part of the rationale for this request is that about 72% of the original technology master plan projects have been completed. So with that, what we are really looking at is that we believe that this change will allow the committee to be more agile and position them to interact more as a strategic and more in an advisory role. So this item was voted on our last technology committee meeting, and it unanimously passed. So to that end, really recommending that we go from 11 to 7 committee members. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions, anyone?
I'll move to approve.
I just wanted to make one comment, and thanks, Charles. And this is an example of a committee that has been changing and morphing to accommodate the city's needs. And, you know, it started when Drew and I first came on council 5 years ago. It has done an amazing job of ensuring that we're been focusing on technology and bringing the city to a higher level of their technology to a higher level, streamlining processes and making things more efficient. And, you know, it ramped up to be a bigger committee because the workload became so large, and now it's morphing back down. So this is an example of a really good committee that has really changed to accommodate the needs of the city. And I just commend you, Charles, and the committee itself for recognizing this. And so I'm in full support.
Thank you, Councilmember
I'll
Persick.
make a motion to move forward.
Okay, so we got a first from Councilman Nickel, Councilmember Perstuck, sorry, with a second. And I'll echo Charles, great job with the IT department.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, I should ask, does Mark want to read?
Oh, sorry, resolution, yes.
Sorry. I'm not sure.
Mark, you there?
I am.
There he is.
I've
Okay.
got one screen tonight, so I'm a little, all right.
You're all good. Thank
A
you.
resolution of the City Council of the City of El Segundo adopting the Technology Committee Bylaws is ready for adoption.
Okay, we already have a motion to approve the resolution. We don't need to do that over again, do we?
You have a motion by Councilmember Nickel,
And a second by Perstuck, yes.
So Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Yes.
Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, Reso passes by 5-0.
All right. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have item 8. El Segundo Environmental Committee update and presentation on residential beekeeping. And I see Tracy Miller-Zarnicki, the chair of the Environmental Committee, on board. And Chai-Ming Rowe, is she there too?
She's here. She's going to come in after I do the quick update from the committee.
All righty. And there's Mr. Mitnick. Is there anyone from staff that would like to make an introduction on this item before we turn it over to the chair of the Environmental Committee?
Well, Elias Sassoon, our Public Works Director, can do that if he's there. Are you there,
Awesome.
Elias?
He's there. I see him, yeah.
I'd be more than happy to make the introduction. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it's my true honor and pleasure to introduce Ms. Tracy Miller-Zarnicki, who is the chair of the Environmental Committee, to go over the update for the Environmental Committee. And also she and I have been working on a briefing along with Ms. Chai-Ming Rowe about the beekeeping. So without any further delay, if you would, I would like to ask Tracy to initiate her presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sassoon. All right, I'll share my screen now if that's all right. And since I'm new to this whole virtual city council, please yell at me if I'm doing something wrong or kindly say something. So let's see if I can get this going. All right, this was first attempted to deliver in about May, and then, you know, things like pandemics happen. So here we are now, finally in the fall. So tonight, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council person, staff, and everyone watching from home, thank you for making time for us on your agenda. Joining me in spirit, if not actually online at the moment, are our fellow committee members, Corey Zupo, Sarah Brockhouse, Kevin McGuy, Rachel McPherson, Caroline Hawks, and maybe even recently retired member Kristen Favor, all of whom care deeply about our city's future and donate a great amount of time and effort and service on this committee. As you in the virtual chambers know, but some of the audience may not know since they haven't seen us in a while, the Environmental Committee is tasked with reviewing current city environmental practices and identifying and advising council on new goals and objectives for city governance over municipal, residential, and business entities within its jurisdiction. These goals and objectives are developed through focusing on and finding balance among the three pillars of sustainability standards, those being economic vitality, environmental viability, and social equitability. So, in our presentation last year, we shared with you our 2017 through 2021 environmental work plan, which we called our toolbox, from which we draw upon to seek to improve the green practices of our city. This massive plan is available to anyone who wants to read it online on the environmental resources page of the city website. But for a short overview, know that its scope covers the 8 categories that you see here on the screen. And identified under each category are specific actionable recommendations to achieve environmental goals that meet or exceed the South Bay Council City of Government's Climate Action Plan, which the City of El Segundo approved in 2017. Tonight, I'll provide a long overdue but hopefully efficient update on the top 5 goals we've been focused on using the tools that appear in the work plan. So here we are. First up, solid waste reduction, continued phase out of single-use plastics. Earlier this year, the committee created a short but informative educational packet to inspire our community to use fewer disposable plastic items, which was distributed digitally through the city website, newsletter, and social media, thanks to Public Works and our committee getting the word out. While we are pleased that the city took a first step in phasing out single-use plastics by putting an on-request only ordinance in place for single-use plasticware, we find that many of our local restaurants are not actually asking customers whether or not they need utensils and straws, instead continuing to put them in the bag when they have takeout deliveries set up. So what we'd like to ask is, perhaps in these times, we encourage both customers and businesses to not distribute or take utensils without the need for having them, because most likely a lot of meals are coming back to the home, which probably generally has utensils there already. So anyway, the added bonus to not putting them in the bag is that it will likely save businesses a good amount of money from the expense of wasted inclusions. We will continue to monitor the progress of developing state and county ordinances and aim for increasing our local steps on this path to catch up with the more than 65 ordinances in California that ban polystyrene in all forms. But in this pandemic moment, we encourage everyone to use their more time spent at home as more time to take a look at daily practices and to find new ways to reduce and reuse. Our next item was to establish a green business recognition program. And while there have been ongoing conversations with both city staff and the chamber to create this program, ideally with the use of grant monies, we are just hoping those grant monies still exist post-pandemic. So we will continue this conversation if and when it's appropriate. But again, we believe that rewarding businesses through recognition of their environmental efforts can help to draw and retain customers when this accolade is used as a marketing tool. And this program can also attract other corporations that share these values to relocate to our city as well. We have a goal of expanding water conservation efforts. Knowing that water continues to be one of our most precious resources and all the additional hand washing going on right now makes them even more precious, we need to continue to conserve our freshwater resources and decrease pollution to our waterways. We look for ways that the city can, first of all, reduce potable water usage. Examples of this would be retrofitting municipal buildings, incentivizing water conservation toilets and faucets in commercial buildings, vis-a-vis a LEED programming or a city green building program. We would look to expand existing programs and target campaigns to increase awareness, investigate allowing gray water reuse, O&M and reporting for overspray of municipal, commercial, and residential properties, and efficiently tracking water pipes, breaks, and leaks. We also hope to reduce contaminated runoff to storm drains so we can lower the health risks for beachgoers, slowing the ocean acidification and harmful algae blooms, as we saw with that pretty glow, but dangerous stuff out there earlier this year. Even if this is as simple as reminding our neighbors not to wash their cars with potable water and let the runoff and contaminants go down the storm drain, that is at least something in the right direction. We want to pursue funding mechanisms or encourage the city to pursue those funding mechanisms, such as those from the Safe Clean Water Program, which some of you may recall being called Measure W on the last ballot. These would help build multi-benefit stormwater projects to increase stormwater capture, which of course benefits our resiliency and reduces polluted runoff. We'd like to see the city utilize the Green Street Implementation Guide that was built for us through the Dominguez Channel Watershed Management Group, which details the best places to install green streets and dry wells. Through these green streets, we can reduce potable water usage, the urban heat island effect, increase our local biodiversity, decrease pollution to the ocean, and beautify our streets. And on the subject of water, how about getting more of those lovely purple pipes into large construction projects for landscape irrigation? This could also work towards goals set forth in the city's climate action plan, by the way. The next item, develop policy to set green construction standards. Just as a baseline reminder, in 2015, Los Angeles buildings produced 15 million tons of CO2 from energy use. In 2017, buildings in Los Angeles accounted for 41% of the greenhouse gases emitted. The California Air Resources Board identifies emissions from construction that cause highly significant local effects on air quality. And these localized impacts can affect community members already impacted by our surrounding freeways, refinery, and airport, and can trigger health issues in our elderly and asthmatic residents. To offset some of this, our committee seeks to establish more sustainable standards for both the construction process and buildings themselves. And we are grateful that Corey and Sarah on our committee have been having productive discussions with both developers and city staff to find a carbon reduction strategy in the construction sector that is business friendly, yet also aligned with the previously approved City of El Segundo Climate Action Plan. The last item of our main goals was to investigate joining a Clean Power Alliance, knowing that in 2017, Californians paid on average 40% more than the nation for their power. We are grateful that this item is logged into the strategic plan thinking as a request at some point when appropriate, that staff thoughtfully assess the option of our city joining a community choice aggregation program to procure power on behalf of our residents, businesses, and municipal accounts from an alternative supplier, while still receiving transmission and distribution through the existing utility provider. If these can lower rates and potentially offer cleaner electricity, they are truly worth our consideration. All right, skipping ahead to the next slide. Yes, other committee tasks. We've been busy with a few other things since we saw you last May. We have been staying up to date on the status of the proposed desalination project, staying in touch with the information provided by the AQMD Rule 1180 Community Air Monitoring Project, leaning on LA County to help keep our beach facilities cleaner. I know some of our community members and other residents regularly call attention to this, and I hope someday it actually takes effect. We continue to research options to create more local CRV and blow away plastic recycling resources. Again, this is probably a post-pandemic thing at this point, but we want to make it easier to recycle those items while we still continue to work towards the reduction of them. We continue to have discussions with various residents and entities about Roundup and leaf blowers. We are actively exploring smoking bans. This is actually the focus for Kevin on our committee at this time, so we consider this one of our top goals moving forward in this moment. Last but not least, we have done some researching and discussion on beekeeping for introduction of new ordinances, but more on that in a moment. So perhaps the most important part of why we exist is so that we can create positive city partnership and community outreach. We recognize that we are all in this together, and knowing our city has already great environmental challenges surrounding itself with a heavy impact industry, we must do what we can to offset that and to set us on a greener path for generations to come. I will say that in this moment in our existence, we are grateful that City Manager Scott Mitnick has included some of our goals in the environmental considerations in your strategic plan discussions for the first time ever since we in this version of the committee have existed. And we also appreciate the sense of partnership that new Public Works Director Elias Sassoon brings in with him. In the spirit of working together, we will continue to seek partnership with other departments, committees, and commissions to find opportunities to collaborate. And lastly, we are here to create community and city interactions that can affect positive change and our personal and in turn municipal change, and to give voice to others who care about our future as well. Shifting the culture and the mindset about our environment to be more aware of how urban development and human behavior affect it can better protect our future. And we thank you all for your support of our efforts, but especially for your concern and effort on behalf of the health and well-being of El Segundo. Are there any questions or anything before I shift us to our next point of discussion?
I have a quick one. I don't see anyone else with their hand up unless I'm missing them. Tracy, on 1180, was that Mayor Succi's bill on the fence line monitoring, or is that different than that?
Yeah, that's the fence line monitoring, which we're happy that some of that's in place, and Chevron was all over getting up on that. So that's a lovely thing to have. We still, as a committee, wish that we had some independent stations set up around town to really understand the full impact of how these local potential contaminants can cross-pollinate. So that's a different thing. That would be in part of what they do, but we're grateful that they did make this step in that direction.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying. All right, any questions, council members? No, I don't see any. Okay.
Okay, then I'm going to take us into part B here, which requires I share the screen again. And at this time, I'm going to ask Chai Ming to come on screen so you can see her lovely real face, not just her photo. She is going to be part of this with me. So let me first share the screen and introduce her. And let's see, everybody sees that? Yes? Okay. So we were contacted by a local resident, that being Chai Ming Rowe, who had a great idea, which she presented with thoughtful research, productive community conversation via social media, and wide-sweeping community buy-in to the concept as well. This led to several discussions within our committee, and our committee unanimously endorsed this idea, which led to joint thinking with the Public Works Director, as well as a few other folks and staff, and ultimately to this presentation that you're going to see tonight on urban beekeeping. At this time, I am going to pass the baton to Chai Ming, who will lead us through the first part of the presentation. Then I will circle back to cover the talking points between environmental and public works. So, Chai Ming, here you go.
Hi, thank you everyone for having me. This is my first city council meeting, so this is very new to me. But basically in March, I had a swarm of wild bees move into my compost bin. And from overnight thinking we're just gonna have a professional come and rescue these bees, we decided we're big animal lovers, let's just try, because they're great for the environment. They're great for all the crops that we're growing in our own backyard for food. So let's give it a shot. Fast forward in May, we heard that it wasn't allowed in El Segundo, and we thought, uh-oh, let's do some homework. We did research. We found that the bees are listed with the chickens under nuisances. However, the chickens have an ordinance that allows them to be in the city with certain requirements that make it safe. So that's how I'm here before you today. And so the ask is for the council to consider amending the city ordinances to allow for urban beekeeping, just like they did for the chickens. Let me see. Sorry, I don't want to read the whole thing to you, but basically our neighboring cities, Santa Monica, Redondo Beach, Torrance, they all allow beekeeping. There's a small fee of less than $50 for most places. And you're required to register with the city as well as the county. And I think most people, probably even on this call tonight, have started a garden or started growing their own food because they walked into a supermarket and realized how bare those shelves were and thought, this is a little scary. Well, all those efforts, gardening and all the seeds we're planting, do nothing if we don't support with the bees, because the bees are doing the pollination for us. And if we're not having the bees help, we need to individually pollinate every single flower just to get the one cucumber, to get the one tomato. So anyway, there's a lot of text that you have time to read later on if you care to learn more. But basically, there's The reasons to beekeep are the pollination, that's one. Then there's the honeybee decline, and lots of facts about that. I don't think this is new news to anybody. And there's the four main reasons of why bees are suffering right now are pesticides, disease, climate change, and then monoculture. So I think where we as homeowners can really help are in pesticides and climate change and doing what we can. And that's what brought me to actually approaching the environmental community versus just coming straight to the city council to ask for this change. And of course, honey. Everybody loves honey, but most of the stuff that you get off of the shelf is actually pasteurized, and all the really good benefits have been extracted from it. So you can read more if you'd like. And then in 2015, LA City Council unanimously approved beekeeping, and it was spearheaded by a nonprofit called Honey Love in 2011. They started in 2011, they finally got it approved in 2015. Luckily for us, there are quite a few cities just in the area that we can piggyback or learn from their learnings as well as our own if we choose to pursue this. So Culver City, Fullerton, Long Beach, Manhattan Beach, our neighbor, Palos Verdes. And even in Palos Verdes, you are allowed to keep up to 5 beehives. That's quite a few. I don't think that's anything that we're looking to do at this point. And then Redondo Beach, they have a high density. So I think that's a really good benchmark since their lots are even smaller and even 2 on a lot versus what we have here in El Segundo. So also San Diego, Santa Monica, and Torrance. So this is just a little slide that has what it takes to be okay in LA County. And so we would at minimum need to meet these requirements. And Tracy will probably go through more of this in detail, but this is just I wanted to put a frame of reference for this is the minimum requirement. And then we can put more layers on to what we feel is comfortable and appropriate for El Segundo.
I am having a technical issue. What's going on here? Let's see. There we are. Thank you.
Okay. And then there were a lot of words. And so I think that's really hard to understand. Well, what does it mean to be 5 feet from the lot line? What does it mean to be, to have 6-foot walls and things like that? So this is just a picture of what the LA County rules require. And we could go way deep in, which I won't do for this call, but for example, you could see that the bees are facing into the property, so they're not going to fly into your neighbors right away. Bees travel anywhere between 0 to 3 miles for foraging for their food. So you want to put all these regulations in, so therefore you encourage the bees to fly up and out as they would normally do to find flowers elsewhere. And I think one important thing before I hand the baton over to Tracy to talk about is if we don't have these regulations put into place, it's really hard to understand if someone is hiding these, bees, running them, their own hive in the backyard. Whereas if you open it up and you have guidelines of have education about it, let's make this an environmental thing where the city is encouraging green initiatives like this, then I think it ensures the safety. If there are people concerned about getting stung, then let's put some guidelines and rules around that. So I think that's it for me, and I can answer questions if anybody has any later.
Yeah, we'll come back to you for sure. Thank you for that. Thank you for all your hard work in putting together that first part of the presentation. It was part of a much bigger one she brought to committee, which was really chock full of wonderful information on a subject that somehow we hadn't even thought of. So thank you, Chiming. So from Chiming's appearance at our committee and our discussions, we then had further discussion with Public Works. And what you're going to see on these next few slides are the highlights of what we think should be proposed in the permit requirements and other things. So for example, you must register as required by the California Food and Agricultural Code in the County of LA. You have to exhibit that you know what you're doing. You can house 1 colony per 3,750 square feet of total lot area. A maximum of 2 colonies would be allowed per lot. Public notification would be somewhere in the 300 to 500 foot radius range. This is a question that probably Mr. Hensley will come with a better answer, a more detailed answer when the time is appropriate. And that public notification is for residents and property owners for issuance of the permit and yearly subsequent renewals. As Chiming also mentioned, there would be direction on where to position the hive to make it the safest place. And again, LA County already has this outlined very clearly and safely. Proper hive management, some of the details that would be lined out clearly in the ordinance are about proper maintenance, equipment storage, adequate water supply, requeening the colony so you do not get aggressive swarming. To be determined whether or not a warning sign is appropriate on property. I know that everybody with dogs doesn't have a warning sign, and there was a whole debate about that a few years ago. Should you, shouldn't you, who's liable, blah, blah, blah. Again, a Mr. Hensley question, I think. And what level, if any, liability insurance coverage needs to be held by the property owner in order to have this. Again, this would be a good city risk manager conversation to have, but we didn't get that far into detail. Inspection would be part of the process. That makes sense. Prior to the issuance of a permit, the property need to be inspected by a certified beekeeper because we do not believe there's someone on staff that could do that. We would suggest hiring a consultant, and that consultant's fees would be subsidized by the permit fees that come up. The colony would need to be inspected every year to have a renewal, and if there's any complaints for the residents nearby, the neighbors, these might be grounds for revoking the permit and or just not renewing it. What this means from the city side is we're asking that the city could prepare a new ordinance in coordination with us. We're happy to help in any way that we are allowed to help to alleviate some of the time and effort. Again, we've shown some of the other cities that already have this in place, so perhaps some copying and pasting from their ordinances would help. We would assume the city would need to hire the consultant to be the proper bee appropriate person for that expertise. And we would need to establish a permit fee to cover the staff time for processing and all the items you see here. We don't have a number on this yet. Mr. Sassoon had said he thought it would be high because we don't do this kind of thing normally, but I think I read that LA County charges $10 for a permit, which, you know, somewhere between 10 and high, let's say the permit would be. But again, I think that someone who is looking to do this in our city, we hope would do it right and would invest properly in that, and that a permit fee would be appropriate and covering more than covering what we need to worry about. So our recommendation at this time is we'd like you to, if you agree, to direct staff to conduct the necessary further due diligence and report back on how we can establish an urban beekeeping program. And now's the time for questions.
I got a question. Are you kidding me? Chickens don't require warning signs?
Believe it or not.
Where?
No, I think Chiming, was there something that you found on that?
If you've ever lived next door to a rooster,
oh yeah,
then I assure you, you will. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that you want to talk about neighbors going coy in Hatfield, live next to a rooster.
Yes, they will not be rooster noise level, I would think. So yeah. Or barking dogs. Anybody that lives near me is like, oh my God, those dogs on the corner. So.
I think Carol has a question.
Yes, Carol.
And then
I just had one question, Casey. Was as far as if someone wants to sell their honey, is there any type of, do we have any type of ordinance about selling produce that you grow in your backyard? And can we apply that same ordinance to the sale of honey? Because I think we just, you know, as people, you know, more and more people are developing home businesses. I just don't want this to become like a, I mean, and I don't know, maybe we do, but we just need to get ahead of it and make sure that we have something in place that talks about the sale of the honey.
I see Mark's on camera. I'm sure he has an answer for this.
The sale of food products would be regulated by County Department of Health and by the State Department of Health. So that's their expertise.
So we would I just want to make sure that's part of the ordinance, that it references that, so that it's very, very clear that someone doesn't have these grandiose ideas that they're going to sell a bunch of honey.
Right. Got it. I don't know that we're going to have enough bees to sell a lot of honey, but yes. Oh, Mr. Sassoon, I see you.
I would like to add, if a person wants to sell honeys, they must secure a license. And that's the recent law that was passed. So they must have a license to do so.
Thank you, sir. I know Councilman Nickel had a question, and Mayor Pro Tem's off mute too, so go to Scott and then Chris.
Awesome.
Tracy, in your committee's discussion regarding how many hives per lot and square footage, so on and so forth, did you discuss multifamily residences, condominiums, townhouses, things like that?
We did not, because I don't know all the regulations involved with those. I'm guessing the yard space is not ever going to be an option on those. Chiming, do you have any detail on that, just having done more city research?
I haven't seen anything like that. And even if the lot is large enough, the max is going to be 2 hives anywhere. So you do.
Yeah, I guess my concern is a townhouse complex. It's a 30,000 square foot lot, and there's 27 units on it, and you have one 27th of that lot. And so, depending upon how we write this ordinance, I think it's just something that staff should look into. I just wanted to know if at the committee level, you guys discussed that at all.
No, and I would imagine that an HOA is in play also, right? On a shared property like that. So that would probably have to align with how they share use of space and all that. So my guess is high density that we want to be around here, there's not going to really be that kind of space on a multifamily property. But, again, those are great dotting of I's and crossing of T's that need to happen in a good ordinance. So thank you. Great thinking.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would like us to do is to, strike our pen and then cause every HOA in El Segundo to have to amend their bylaws and hire an attorney to do so. So I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of that.
All right.
Good point. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, beyond the fact that now Councilmember Nickel has me shuddering at the thought of an ADU beehive bill coming down the pipe from San Francisco. Just so I understand, we currently have an ordinance against beekeeping.
Yes, they are a nuisance.
For further proof of what was happening here in the 30s when we started making so many rules. I would say that I'm glad you touched on Redondo in there, because clearly that is a place that with a level of density and probably a somewhat similar demographic is a reasonably easy template to work from. And I think that the biggest concern that we, and I'll use the royal we on the dais, get is how to work on good and bad neighbor rules. And if there's things where you have someone who is, a dog may be vicious, but a bee, even in its infinitesimalness, is a venomous creature, right? So the degree of anaphylaxis of a neighbor or a concern of a parent to having a highly allergic child is something that I think we would typically want to grant broad deference. So as I presumptively think you're going to move forward with this, I would put that in mind that, if we're about something, one thing as a community, it's we want to make sure that do it for the kids sort of thing. And I would think we should be deferential to that. We would not want to be in a situation where we're weighing 2 competing stories in front of the city council where someone says, look at my child and what they're doing to him. They're 4 houses down and they have bees, and this is what I'm subjected to. I know that's probably a moonshot scenario, but we get all kinds of moonshot scenarios in a state that outlaws ferrets. So
good thinking. Good.
So I would just say,
do we have a ferret ordinance? I don't know if we have a ferret ordinance here.
Ferrets are illegal under
They're illegal in the state? Oh, okay.
In the state. And as any Big Lebowski viewer will know. So I would just say that would be my 2 cents on it, is to just be mindful of those sorts of considerations. But thank you.
Hey, thank you. Councilmember Nickel, I think you had more.
I had a similar thought as Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel in regards to, the thought of a child. And this is going to be a question, I'd love it if somebody has personal experience that they can answer, but how much does it cost to have bees removed or relocated from your property when they swarm? Does anybody know?
Chiming, do you know, since you sort of went down that path?
So if it can be free, if you find a volunteer beekeeper who can take them to a sanctuary. It does need to be at least 3 to 5 miles away or they will return. And it can be up to $300. I mean, that's if we're talking about it's in a hive, okay? Now, if we're talking infestation or we're talking like in your eaves and in your house, that's a different scope. But
That's what I'm talking about.
okay.
I'm talking about you're a beekeeper, you got a couple hives in your backyard, a new queen is born, and boom, they take off and they're now stuck on the side of my house. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I have bees stuck on the side of my house. And then I go online and look for bee removal or bee, relocation. To Chris's point about like the child down the street, now we have this neighbor that's going to come to us at the dais and say, I have spent, $300 4 times over this year because apparently West Maple is a wonderful place with big yards that people can have multiple beehives in their backyards, right? And there's lots of flowers to pollinate. And so now bees are swarming all the time.
So
Yeah, I think, oh, go ahead, chime in.
Sorry. So that is one side of it. The other side is there are bees outside all the time. There are wild bees everywhere. Now, all of a sudden for me, if I have one hive and I've maintained it pristine, I requeen, I do not let it multiply, but then someone gets stung down the street, all of a sudden that wild bee becomes my bee. So it is very sensitive. I totally understand what your point. But when it comes down to bee behavior, like if they do swarm, they don't stick around typically. But if they do, that's a different situation.
Yeah, 2 thoughts I want to throw in here is that, as Chiming was suggesting, a managed beehive is way less dangerous than non-managed ones or just feral ones. But I will tell you that there have been bees in a fence 2 houses down from me for, I don't know, months, probably 3 months or so. I walk my dogs by there every single day. They come out, they fly around, they go back in. They have never stung us multiple times a day that I walk by. And that's feral bees. So, I would hate to think that every bee is out to sting somebody in town. That's always a last resort for bees. They don't want to die, so they don't try to do that unless you're like poking them or whatever. It's not a natural thing for them to come and attack you. So we'll keep that in mind as well. But these are all good.
And one thing I want to point out, council, is all we're doing is we're entertaining a motion directing staff to conduct the necessary due diligence and report back to city council with the residential beekeeping program recommendations. So we're going to get more into the details on this when it comes up anyway, as we start diving into it. So would someone like to make a motion to direct staff to conduct the necessary due diligence report back to us with the residential beekeeping program recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Mayor, so moved.
Thank you.
I want to be on the front of the bee revolution.
Nichols second, seeing that Mr. Mayor is tired of talking about bees tonight. I had more questions.
No, I love bees.
I'll hold on to them for next time.
I'm just saying,
if it's $300 for bee removal, I can do that with some Aquanet and a barbecue lighter for about half of it.
I second it. I second it. Let's bring it back. Bring it back for more information. And Mr. Mitnick, if staff has any further questions, please have them reach out to us individually for our concerns or our thought processes in regards to looking at what the other cities have done ordinance-wise.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, sir. All right, Madam Clerk, should we do a roll call vote, please?
You got it. Councilmember Giroux?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Yes.
Mayor Boyles?
Yes.
All right, you guys, 5-0 to come back.
Thank you, Chai. I really appreciate you being on and presenting, and of course, Tracy, you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work. Thanks for the update on the environmental stuff too as well. Good stuff. Okay, report, City Clerk. Anything to report this evening?
Oh, let's see. I was perusing the lavote.net website today and found an extra, so to speak, polling place that will be actually at the Dockweiler Youth Center. So if you're heading out to surf, you can head out to vote. So that's a little extra site for El Segundo residents. And then once again, we still have Embassy Suites. And I believe I said Hilton Garden Inn, but it's actually it's in I forget, but it's out on Grand. And then we just secured the teen center, so we will have a spot in town. So we're good to go. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, anyone from the City Treasurer's Office? Matt or Dino? I don't think so. Okay, Councilmember Giroux.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Nickel.
I just want to thank all of our CCBs. I want to thank all of the people who applied for the DEI committee, all the people that came and interviewed with us in person. It was a out of the ordinary experience from start to finish. I've never asked the same question on repeat so many times before, and was surprised by the end that I didn't have it memorized. But I do want to thank all of you for coming out. And again, if you paid attention tonight, some of those appointees are on partial terms, and so those terms will come up in a couple of years. So if you're interested in getting involved in the city, in committees, there are great committees like you saw tonight, the Environmental Committee. There's the Tech Committee, which we actually approved eliminating a couple of positions from, so it might be hard to get on that right now. But there's the Planning Commission, there's Parks and Rec Commission. There's many, many ways to get involved at City Hall and to have your voice heard. And if you're looking at this screen, many of us started on committees before we worked our way to our seats here. So I just want to thank our community for their involvement and their continued support. And just a reminder to just continue to be kind to each other. You know, the world is changing every day, and we are going to reopen parks and try to reopen restaurants and try to get the governor to answer our letter. But in the meantime, let's just try to be kind to one another. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilmember Perstuck.
Yes, I just want to thank all the clubs that came together, the Rotary, the Kiwanis, the National Charity League, and working with the police and the Parks and Recs on coming up with some opportunities for our children to have an amazing Halloween. And I know that there's a lot of opportunities for the kids to get involved. So I'm just really thankful to the clubs. It really shows the community spirit in town. And then I also just want to put out there, Tracy, you mentioned the locations that where the in-person voting is. So the only real location for someone on the west side to vote in person would be the teen center. I just want to put it out there is if we could offer a dial-a-ride service to any seniors that wanted to have a ride to that polling center, because that's a very far place to walk if you live on the west side of town, like the northwest side. I just want to make sure that all of our residents have an opportunity to vote in person if they so choose. So I would like to task that with with Scott Mitnick to look at that to ensure that we offer that service to our seniors.
Good idea.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem.
Just again, Mr. Mayor, I would implore people to read the fine print and their voter guide on all of the ballot initiatives that are out there. You know, I won't say disregard TV commercials, but use those as your entry point to look at these. There are truly enormous sums of money at stake. I mean, almost to a degree where the numbers become fictitious to conceive of when you look at the implications of 15, 19, 21, 22, Measure J, which is a county charter amendment. So these are things that you like to see people to really dive in and understand the implications of what each one of these votes would mean, because we are up here battling over $30,000, and there's some of these where you're talking about 13 and 14 billion dollars that could move around. So I think those are things that are worth reiterating to people. In the regional end, we have the League of Cities Summit tomorrow, which will deal heavily with redistricting, especially going into a census year. As you know, our assembly seat right now goes due east on the 105 in a very convoluted gerrymandered seat that includes Marina Del Rey, us, and then points east, which was a change from the last district we were in. So we'll be talking at length about those tomorrow. We have upcoming meetings on regional transportation. A lot of people may have received emails for a survey from the South Bay COG about last mile services, whether it's scooters, bicycles, golf carts, things like that. Those are important things we want people to weigh into because those will be on the transit docket. And then lastly, contract cities, which is something that we are a part of because we contract with the county for Department of Public Health Services. So Contract Cities has an initiative to start a housing subcommittee to look and propose legislation up through the COGS and League of Cities. So the City of El Segundo will participate in that on that subcommittee basis, along with Palos Verdes and Hermosa. So that's all on the local beat over here.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I have nothing this evening. Let's turn over to City Attorney. Anything, Mark?
Nothing this evening, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Mitnick.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, no additional follow-up from tonight. I do want to just do a shout out to our public works staff for doing the lighted water tower with the Halloween theme, the orange coloring. So hopefully everybody is seeing that and enjoying that, but really pleased how quickly they did that. Just a sample of our commitment to making Halloween as special as we can given the circumstances. Also like to just also compliment our staff from the park side and public works side for going out on Sunday to ensure that one of the playgrounds was indeed available to everybody. We talked, you were complimentary about that, but having all the way up to a department head go out on a Sunday afternoon to expedite getting a park playground open, it just speaks volumes to how dedicated your employees are. 7 days a week. Okay, next council meeting will be on October 20th, a relatively light agenda at this time. Items worth noting, we hope to have everything together to present to council some of the reorganization implementation measures. As you'll recall, we consolidated departments or 2 departments and did some other maneuvering to balance the budget. We have some implementation measures, technical documents for you to approve to effectuate those changes. And also you have a subcommittee of council working on some pension issues, and that committee would like to come back or report to council if it's possible on the 20th with their initial recommendation. So we're hopeful to do that on October 20th. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. All right, council is closing regular and we are still in closed session. So I will see the rest of you momentarily. Have a great evening, El Segundo. Night. We're adjourned.